If you've ever felt uneasy implementing something just because it's evidence-based, this video is for you. Because deep down, you know there's a difference between what's been studied and what's actually right for your clients. You didn't work this hard to become a BCBA just to follow protocols that don't sit right with your values. Let's talk about the ethical gap no one is preparing us for and why it's costing us our passion, our trust, and sometimes even our clients. We've been building the field of ABA brick by brick, but what if we've been building on the wrong foundation? Most of us became BCBAs because we care about doing what's right for our clients. We're told to rely on evidence-based practices, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of those practices might actually violate the very ethics we're trying to uphold. We've been led to believe that evidence-based means effective and ethical, but the reality is that there's often a gap. I'm a BCBA and the co-founder of Master ABA and the Dojo community, and I've worked with hundreds of BCBAs who are struggling with this exact disconnect. Today, I'm going to walk you through why evidence-based isn't always ethical and how you can bridge the gap without compromising your integrity or your effectiveness. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to start with the definition of evidence-based and why that's often misleading, the ethical gray zone, how this disconnect contributes to burnout, and what you can do starting today to make a change. We've spent so much time stacking strategies and protocols, but now it's time to actually look at what we're building and whether the foundation still reflects who we are and what we value. You've probably heard this phrase 100 times. Use evidence-based practices. It's drilled into us from grad school through certification and beyond. And don't get me wrong, evidence matters. It absolutely does. But here's what most people don't realize. This just means that the practice was studied, that someone somewhere showed a statistically significant outcome in a controlled environment. But it doesn't tell us how the client felt during the intervention. It doesn't tell us if that outcome came at the expense of autonomy or dignity or even long-term trust. It doesn't even mean it's the best option for the client in front of you. The science of behavior is a lot like the law of gravity. It's neutral. Gravity exists. But what we do with it is where ethics comes in. If you push someone off a roof, gravity isn't the problem. It's how you used it. Behavior science is the same. The laws work, but how we apply them determines if we're helping or harming. We start stacking these evidence-based strategies like bricks, one after another. And because they're approved, we assume that the foundation is solid. But here's the truth. What's been researched isn't always what's right. And when we confuse studied with safe, we risk becoming rule followers instead of compassionate, critical thinking professionals. It might look like we're building something strong, but if we never ask why, never check for alignment with our values, we end up with something that can't hold the weight of the work that we do. So when you hear evidence-based, I want you to pause. Ask yourself, does this match what I believe is right for this client? Does it reflect how I'd want to be treated or how I'd want someone to treat my own child? Because that question is where ethics begins. And what brings us that brings us to an even bigger question. What does evidence-based actually mean when it's missing the ethical lens? Let's talk about what I call the ethical gap, because this is where a lot of BCBAs get stuck. We're told, sometimes even pressured, to use a strategy just because it's backed by research. But deep down, something doesn't sit right. You feel that gut pull. You ask yourself, is this really helping my client or is it just checking a box? And that tension, that's the ethical gap. It's the space between what's technically effective and what's truly right. So let's take something like escape extinction. It's been studied. It works in the sense that the behavior decreases. But would you want someone ignoring your child's distress because it's part of a protocol? Would you want that done to you? Just because it's evidence-based doesn't mean it's ethical. And just because something reduces a behavior doesn't mean it's improving someone's life. That's what I want us to think about. Not just what's effective in a study, but what's compassionate, respectful, and actually supports long-term well-being. When we start adding ethics into our foundation, blocks like autonomy, assent, cultural responsiveness, that's when our work starts to feel different, stronger, more meaningful, more aligned. This is what we should be aiming for, a practice that's grounded in research and in humanity. It's not too much to ask. It's exactly what our clients deserve. And honestly, it's what we deserve too. So what do you do when the work you've trained so hard for is suddenly feels so out of sync with what you believe in? When your heart says one thing, but the system demands another. Here's where it gets personal. Most of us didn't become BCBAs because we wanted to run compliance drills or write evidence for insurance-friendly goals. We came into this field with big hopes and real passion. We wanted to help people. We wanted to change lives. But what happens when the job we thought we signed up for doesn't match the reality of our experiences? You're handed a huge caseload. You're asked to supervise staff with little or no support. You're expected to implement rigid protocols that feel misaligned with your values, sometimes even with your client's needs. And then when you start to feel the weight of all of that misalignment, you're told to just practice self-care. So this is what happens when we try to build a career on protocols alone. It just doesn't hold up because it never was meant to. But when you incorporate all of the good stuff, assent, compassion, curiosity, and connection, then we get something that's a lot more solid. You're not burned out because you're doing something wrong. You're burned out because you're trying to do the right thing in a system that doesn't always support it. That gap between what you believed this work would be and what it actually looks like isn't just uncomfortable, it's unsustainable. And here's the good news. You don't have to choose between being effective and being ethical. You don't have to keep building a career on top of something that doesn't feel right. There's a different way to do this, one that's based on alignment, not just compliance. So how do we break out of that cycle? How do we start practicing in a way that's both effective and aligned with our values? Let's talk about what it actually looks like to practice ethically and effectively, not just when you're writing your plans, not once you have time to learn more about Ascent, but starting today. This isn't just about what you teach your team to do, but how you show up while you're doing it. Because as BCBAs, you're not usually the ones implementing every plan. We're supervising, we're guiding, we're modeling what right actually looks like. It all falls on us to make sure that we're working in alignment. Let's say you're providing supervision during a session where the RBT is following your plan exactly. Everything looks clean on paper, but the client's body language is tense. They're turning away, they're holding their breath. You can feel the disconnection, even if the data sheet doesn't capture it. And that's a moment, a real opportunity to say, hey, what's the client communicating here? What would it look like to slow this down and meet them where they are? You're not tearing the plan apart. You're not throwing anyone under the bus. You're inviting curiosity into the process. You're modeling the pause. That alone starts to shift the culture of your team from compliance-driven to connection-driven. Or maybe you're reviewing a graph and you see a sharp decrease in behavior, and that looks great, right? But now you're questioning the strategy. You're unsure if you're actually practicing compassionate care. Instead of celebrating the data, try asking, did the client seem more relaxed or was he more withdrawn? You're prompting your team to go beyond the numbers, to consider the emotional cost. And the more you do that, the more your team learns to look past the protocol and into the person. So here's something else you can do this week. Start building assent into your team's daily language. During supervision, try saying, how did the client show you they were on board with the activity? What did you do when they seemed to pull back? No lecture, no quiz, just normalizing the idea that assent isn't extra, it's what's expected. The more your RBTs hear that, the more natural it becomes to adjust in real time, not just because the BCBA is watching, but because it's something that feels right to them too. And when you get pushback about implementing compassionate, assent-based care, because you will, maybe from another supervisor or just from a system that's laser focused on the evidence-based practices, you can try saying something like this. I'm not saying the other strategies aren't effective. I'm simply asking if they're aligned. You're not dismissing the data. You're elevating the standard. That's what leadership looks like in our field right now. This is what we're building, not just for your clients, but for your staff, your culture, your future caseloads. Because when we lead with values, the data still matters, but so does the person behind the progress. And that's what changes everything. Just because something is evidence-based doesn't mean it's right for every client. And just because you're questioning it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It means you're paying attention. It means you're becoming the kind of BCBA this field desperately needs. Someone who's not afraid to pause, reflect, and lead with integrity. This is what ethical, effective ABA can look like, and it's possible today without burning out or selling out. And you don't have to figure it out alone. Inside the Master ABA Dojo, we're building a new kind of practice, one that's grounded in values and results, a space where you can get mentorship, support, and real tools that help you thrive, not just survive. Because here's the truth. If we stop at individual change, we miss the bigger picture. ABA as a field is at a breaking point, and unless we start changing the way that we practice at scale, the system itself might not survive. Insurance companies are watching, advocates are speaking up, families are walking away. And if we don't evolve, if we don't fix the foundational cracks, we're going to lose the field altogether. That's what this next video is all about. Make sure to watch. ABA won't survive unless BCBAs do this. We're going deeper into the real systemic risks and the 3 things every BCBA can start doing today to be part of the solution, not just another burnout statistic. Don't wait. If this resonated with you, watch the next one because this work is too important to lose. Let's build something better together.